So I just showed the kids how to factor this to start the hour, and it has a 2 in the front, and we've never factored something like that before. And I explained that the only difference really was that you had to use 2x and x. Okay, cool. How do I know it works? Let me show you this. 1x, and that makes 2x, and together these make 3x, and that's what I wanted. If it had come out the opposite of what I wanted, like, oh crap, I actually needed negative 3x instead of 3x, then you'd change the signs. If it's ever opposite of what you want to change the signs. All right, let's give you one that should work. 2x squared plus, let me think, 5x plus 1. Got that copy down? You always start with your framework, parentheses like that, and then x and x, but you'll quickly realize that's not enough. To get x and x won't work because it only makes x squared, and I want 2x squared. Keegan, what should I put where? Yes, that's it. That's the only difference. Now all the other steps are the same. Hugh Nugent, are there any negatives in the problem? No. So what do I do? Plus and plus. Now how do I make a 1 get multiplied out? And I just realized I screwed up. Because this would have to be 1 and this would have to be a 1, and that adds up to 3x, not 5x. Crap, I did it wrong. Gave you a problem that doesn't work. But don't erase everything. I remember doing this in my head, and I had said to use a 2 in my head, and then I used a 1. Sorry, that's a 2. Erase the last number. It's a 2. So do we have to erase everything? No, just the last number. Sorry, my bad. It's not like things, in the real world, sometimes things don't factor. The last one, it just didn't factor. You thought it would work, and then you check it, and it wouldn't work. So, yes?
What's the difference between these equations and the GCFs?
What's the difference between these equations and the GCF? Okay, on a GCF kind, this would have been even, and this would have been even, and this would have been even, and we would have taken the 2 out to the front. But do you get there's no 2 in a 5? That's why we don't do a GCF. It's a good question. All right. So, same. 1 multiplies to 2. Now, I'm going to on purpose put the 2 in the wrong spot because you wouldn't know. You wouldn't know where to put it. So I'm putting a 2 times 1. I just happen to put it in the wrong spot. And here's how you would have noticed. You'd go like this. Oh, crap. It doesn't work. 2x and 2x, that makes 4x. Does that mean I made the problem wrong again? No. It just means we tried putting the 2 and 1 in there, and it didn't work because it added up to 4x, not 5x. So then I guess if it's not the number you want, switch them around. And almost like in the past, that wouldn't have worked. Now, switching the numbers around works. Because what do you get for this part? 1x. What do you get for this part? 4x. Do you get that does make 5x? Okay. This slide right here, this problem we just did, that is your typical question on the test. We almost never make it anything other than a 2 or a 3 in the front like this because we don't want to make it too hard. All right. Now, I want to sidestep and talk about some other things I noticed are things that we test on and we haven't talked about much. And the test isn't until next week. But everybody write this one down. X squared plus 6x equals 7. We have never had one like that before. So then what do? I will show you. The first thing is you gotta set it equal to 0. And that's something that they always were before. They always were set up nicer than this. They were always equal to 0, and you probably never even noticed. To get this equal to 0, I'm gonna subtract 7, because then you'll have 0, right? And if I subtract 7 on that side, I gotta subtract 7 on this side. Sam Lowe, would you please read me my new equation that equals 0 now?
Would it be x squared plus
You're seeing it right here. Just don't try to put those together because they're not like terms.
6x minus 7.
That's it. This kind is so easy if you just know to set it equal to 0. Then it's like every other factoring problem. You just have one extra thing to do at the beginning, and then it's like every other factoring problem. Would you please factor it the rest of the way? Factor it. You know the first step, parentheses. You know the second step, put in your x's. You know the third step, put in the signs. And then it'll just be one thing left. The numbers. So, Mr. Kist, you gotta let me know when you get here, because I didn't notice you till now, and that means you could have been 13 minutes late. Okay, so you should have put 2 parentheses. And now I'd love to just like take volunteers, but your class has so few volunteers. I have to use dice to get some volunteers. I'm being voluntold to answer. It's row 2, person 2, and that's you, Dylan Johnson. Tell me what, one step at a time. What did you do first?
So first up, I'm gonna, put x in each parenthesis.
Excellent.
And then x minus. And then
How did you know there's a minus there?
There's a minus in the problem. So
Excellent.
that means there's gonna be one there. And then because that's a minus, it has to be a plus. Because a minus
Yes.
will be
Perfect. Because the last number is negative, it has to be a plus and a minus. Beautiful. And then you have only one thing left, which is what?
multiply, so it's equal to 7, and would make 6x.
So you got a 6 and a 1. It's a really common mistake. 6 times 1 doesn't make 7.
No, I was.
Oh, you were explaining how it comes out to 6.
Yeah.
Okay. So what 2 numbers?
You do 3.5 times 2.
Interesting. Nope.
Or,
Can't use decimals. I get what you were thinking. 3.5 times 2 is 7. You're right, but we can't use decimals in these. So, think of another way to make a 7. Is another one more way to make a 7.
oh, 7 and 1. Yeah.
7 and 1.
See that?
All right. So now let me just show you how we can tell if it's right. That's negative 7x. That's positive 1x. And you did everything right. It's just now you have to adjust. And you go, dang, I'm getting negative 6x. Trust me. Don't switch the numbers. Switch the signs. Because I know what we're doing today. And if you had switched it on that last problem we did, if you had switched the numbers around, it wouldn't have worked. You had to switch the signs. If you get the opposite of what you want, use the opposite signs. There. X plus 7, x minus 1. Okay. So what was the moral of the story there? If they ever start the problem like this, what's your first step? Equal to what? Make it equal to what?
0.
0. So then what are you going to do to both sides?
Minus 9.
Minus 9. Everybody finish this one. Okay, so that's something we test on. Another thing we test on is can you factor out a negative? And I'll show you that next. Dylan Osberg, what has to be the first step on all these problems?
Put X in both parentheses.
Yep. Does it actually make x squared? Yes, it does. Like, remember earlier, sometimes we have to use 2x and x, but in this case, x and x works. And Dylan, what's the next thing you do?
Get the sign.
Yep.
Negative and positive.
Yes, because the last number is negative, you can just jump to that. If the last number is negative, then it's a plus and a minus. And it doesn't matter where the minus and the plus are. You could put the minus first if you want. All right, I'm going to be consistent. I've always put them, if I had one negative, I put it here. You don't have to, though. You might have to switch it at the end, you know, if necessary. Okay, and then the last thing is what multiplies to 9, and I would have thought 3 and 3, but then you'd quickly realize that and that aren't making 8. So it's not 3 and 3. What is it?
-1 and 9.
-1, +9. I know he's right because I did this in my head really quick. 9x minus 1x, and that makes 8x. Yay. Okay, last melon. Like, seriously, last new thing I have to teach you today, and then we'll just practice some stuff. Last new thing. What if it starts with a negative? This is hard to do unless you do the right thing. I'll show you what the right thing is. For right now, just copy the problem down. Just watch out. That guy's name is Max, and Max is tough. Tough factor. Okay, because that negative in the front, you might think you should just make some parentheses and start going. Don't do that. It won't work. It won't work. You've got to get rid of Max first. So we're going to take a -1 and put it on the outside, and that's called a GCF. And you wouldn't think of this unless the math teacher tells you to do it. But you can factor a -1 out of everything. And then the -1 won't be in your parentheses anymore, and then you can factor it like normal. All right, so please just get to this far, copy this down to here. And then, do you remember how to factor out a GCF? Do you remember that little deal where I would divide everything by that? That's the secret to knowing what to put inside. You've got to know how to divide by -1. And dividing by 1 doesn't really do anything. So dividing by a negative just changes the sign of it. Do you get now all of a sudden that dividing by the 1 doesn't really do anything, but dividing by a negative, the negatives will cancel. You've got x squared. And now it's going to be like normal to factor. And this will be -4x. And this will be -5. It's like opposite day. This used to be plus, and this plus, and now it's minus and minus. See? All right, that's factoring out a negative. I know that's weird. That even is challenging for my honors students to get their head around. It's like you have to factor out the negative, huh? Yes, you do. But now that I did that, I bet you every one of you can factor the red part. The -1 stays here, and you make your 2 parentheses and finish it off. Do it. Prove to yourself you can factor this. I only get to pick one most important thing for this whole year, and it's factoring. Because it keeps coming up in every chapter after this, and especially in pre-calc, which is what a lot of you are going to take next year. In FST, it comes up all the time too. And I've been told, even though I don't teach the calculus classes, that factoring is big in that class too. So if you get as far as calculus, it's even in there. All right. Nordling, as you were factoring the red part, how do we always start? Yep. And then tell me about the signs.
Plus and minus.
Because why? What number told you it was going to be a plus and minus?
The
Yep, that told you this has to be a minus and a plus. Now, which order they're in doesn't really matter. I just always put my minus first. Because I also can say, is there a negative in the problem? Then this has to be negative. Okay, good. And now you're left with one number. That's it. See how the end of this, like everything is forced from logic. You have to put x's. You have to put a minus because there's a minus in the problem. You have to put a plus because this last number is negative. Now you only have one thing left. And the only way to make a 5 is don't do 2.5 and 2. It would work, but it wouldn't actually give you the right answer. So you got to use 5 and 1. And the only thing that can go wrong is that you might put them in the wrong spot. So how do I know if I put them in the wrong spot? You check negative 1x and you check 5x. Some of you aren't going to do that step, and that is the most important step, is checking to see if it actually might do what you wanted. 5x minus 1x makes 4x, not negative 4x. Crap, it's the opposite of what I wanted. Make it the opposite signs. Don't change the numbers. I know you think that that's going to be work awesome, but it won't. Because on today's hardest problems, when you switch the signs around, it'll work. But if you had switched the numbers around, it wouldn't work. So if you ever get the opposite, what you wanted, switch the signs. All right, now you are ready to fly through a few more slides because these will be pretty easy. Would you please factor these? They should be like a walk in the park. Bam, bam. Done. I'm hoping we're done with this whole lesson and something that would round to 5 minutes. Anderson, how do you start? Yep. Does this one have a minus in it? Is this the kind that has a plus and a minus? Yep. And you're down to one thing left. What's that last thing? There's a lot of choices, isn't there? You could use, give me some options. What time? 1 times 12 makes 12. That works. That is a possible answer. And I'll tell you ahead of time, it doesn't work. Like if I stick in the 12 and the 1, you multiply it out, it doesn't work. What else? All right. Now, for right now, it would be really handy if she had, and all of you had, that little half sheet thingy out. So if you have your little sheet thingy, I'd recommend taking it out. And here's the one that's optional, because I know some of you are good at this. But if you need this, then get it out. Next thing is not optional. Take out your worksheet I gave you yesterday. It was a piece of paper worksheet. Because now there's a problem on there that I had you cross off that we're going to go back and do. Find your worksheet. If you lost your worksheet, I have an extra one. Anybody need a worksheet? Just come on up. They're right here on my desk. Need a worksheet? Right there, on top of the batteries. Okay, do you think anything else that multiplies 12? 6 what? 6 and 2. All right. I'll save you some time. Unfortunately, if I put in the 6 and the 2, I get negative 6x and positive 2x, and that does not make negative x. It makes negative 2x. So it's like even switching the numbers around isn't going to help. So it's not 6 and 2. What is the last one? 4 and 3. So then it's got to be a 4 and a 3, and I on purpose put it in there right to just save us some time. 3 times x is 3x. Do you get if it would have come out to positive x instead of negative x? I would have just switched the signs. All right, good enough. We're going to skip over the other problem. How about this one? That's the new kind for today. Focus on this purplish colored page. As soon as you put in x and x, I hope you go, wait, crap, that's not going to work. Paloma, what should I use instead? Yes, 3x and x. because that will make 3x squared. And now all the steps are the same. Lindholm, is there a negative in the problem?
No,
What do I do then?
3x plus 2 and plus 6.
Plus 2. And you're saying it's 2 and 6 because they multiply to 12? Now, I have no idea if he's right. Oh, but all I got to do is this and this to see if it's right. And he's got it because those two make 20. There was other choices. It could have been 4 and 3. It could have been 12 and 1, but he hit it. It was 2 and 6. All right. The two other things I taught you for today that were key were this, where you would factor out the -1. Everybody try that quick. Factor out the -1. We're almost done here, boys and girls. Seriously, one more slide. Focus. Do this. Take the -1 out, put a parenthesis. And to do a GCF, you divide them all. Divide, divide, divide. That is not the class is over, chairs sliding around. That's the halfway through class. Chairs are sliding around. So, x squared minus 7x minus 8, but they used to be positive, and now they're negative. Cool. And then, if you've gotten good at factoring by now, which I know some of you have, you probably already snapped off x. There's a minus in the problem. Oh, this one's negative, so that's got to be a plus and a minus. And then you probably figured out 8 had two choices, 4 and 2, which isn't going to make a 7, or 8 and 1, which is going to make a 7. And this is 8, and this is 1. Boom, done. Think you can handle factoring out a negative? All right, good. And the last kind that I told you that you'd never seen before was x squared plus 2x equals -1. And then it seems so weird that kids don't even know how to start. But all they have to do, Sam, do you know what to do to get this started?
You do +1.
You got it. And it's x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 0. And now you can go. Boop, 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 boop. X and x, all pluses. 1 times 1 is the only way to make a 1. Is that it? I check. I get 2x. I'm done. All right, cool. Now you've learned enough that we can handle the last slide. Actually, it's page 8. Page 8. If you get this one, you are in a really good place because I only have one thing left I have to teach you to be ready for the test. And the test isn't until Thursday. We just get a ton of time to practice. So, if you get this kind, you are in a really good place. Always, even if you're stuck, just get started. And then go, well, he always said to start with x's. And then you'd realize that's not enough. Hugh, what's wrong with starting with just x's?
I can't see anything.
Okay, because x times x makes x squared. Is that what we are trying to get? Is x squared?
5x.
There we go. 5x and x. Then the next thing that we always do is talk about signs. Is there any negatives in the problem? So then this one's negative. Is this one negative? Because if it is, we're going to use a plus and a minus. But it's not. So what do? This one has to be minus. Remember, if this one's negative, you'll use plus and minus. That's not negative, so you don't use plus and minus. You use minus and minus. A negative times a negative makes a positive. Then you have one thing left. What multiplies to 6 and sticking it in the right place? Nico.
5x minus 3.
5. Oh, wait, no. 3 and 2?
Yeah.
All right. 3 and 2 does multiply to 6. Now, I don't know if he's right or not. Esh, would you help me multiply this and this out? What do I get for the negative 3 times the x? And how about the other ones? Put these together, and what do you get? Does that seem to be right? Sweet, he got it. Nice job. All right. 3 times 2 makes 6, right? If you thought you had it with 6 and 1, it doesn't actually add up. 6 times 1 is 6. Yeah, that works. But your outside and your inside, the smiley face part of factoring, that wouldn't have worked. All right, then what is this doing over here? Solve, and it's the same exact thing. You got to find your x equals. One of them is a no-brainer. The other one, harder. Henry Nichols,
Yep.
tell me the easy one.
Probably the easiest one I think is probably either the second one,
Yep, I think that's the easiest one.
because it's like just 2.
Yup.
So,
X equals 2, done.
Yep.
But, unfortunately, a ton of kids don't know how to do this one. Do you know?
yes.
How do you do the 5x minus 3? What do you do?
Well, you know that y has to equal 0, so you have to do 5x minus 3 equals 0. So
Yes.
just add 3 to the side and just do 3 divided by 5. So,
Yup, final answer is 3 divided by the 5. Because there, I solved the two-step equation. X equals 3/5. Okay. That wraps it up. You know everything. Now, on your worksheet for yesterday, I told you to skip number 14 because I knew you didn't know how to do it. Would you please go back and do number 14 now, because you're smarter than you were. We're not handing this in yet. At the end of the hour, we'll hand it in. So any of you that slacked a little bit, didn't get her done, you could crank it out like for the end of the hour and still have it in on time. But please do number 14 right now while it's fresh in your mind. It's easy to explain. You doing that? Good. Try number 14 right now that you're smarter. Could I just borrow that kid's pencil? Because I'd much rather do a paper one. So there's a whole stack of pencils right here. Besides, you don't want to have to redo all the other ones. Last night?
I just grabbed that one.
Oh, okay. All right. This is a piece of paper. That's good. Do you have a worksheet on that one? I'm not allowed to do worksheets. And I do get that. Just don't fall too far behind. Like, you can, like, just do a problem. Okay.
You better be ready to take that test next time.
You may wear sunglasses, yes. I do get that help sometimes with concussions. And I do know. I have seen, do you have sunglasses with you?
Yes, you do.
All right, here we go. So for number 14, Maura, would you just read me number 14 in the front row?
Negative x squared plus 4x
Minus 3? Okay. So then, I hope you learned this now today. You take out the negative 1. Daniel Kurth, after I took out the negative 1 on problem 14 on the worksheet, what do I have left on the inside of the parenthesis?
X
Yes. Then you can factor it again. Daniel, I always start with x and x. Does that work for x squared? Yep. Then what? Is it minus minus? Is it plus minus? Minus minus. Good. To make that be positive, you'd have to use two negative numbers. Good. And then the last melon. Daniel? Yes, this must be a 3 times a 1 to make a 3. Negative 1 times negative 3 makes 3. And then this and this make negative 4. Yay, it worked. That's just a 1. It's a weird looking 1, though. I'm going to fix it. There. Okay, cool. So, finish up that worksheet at the end of the hour as you walk out. I will collect it from you. And if you digit digitally, then that's fine. Just submit it into the Dropbox. In the meantime, your homework for today is, of course, not that worksheet. That's the old homework. I want to... Yeah, the other side of it's too easy. So we're just going to do that one side. So I'm going to assign you what you would think. It's in Schoology. And find the worksheet for today in Schoology, and I'll tell you which ones to skip. Please pull that up right now. Oh, factor completely when A is not 1. All right. I think you should skip 6 and 8 today. Oh, really? That leaves you literally with 6 questions. Should be super easy. You may skip 6 and 8. Of course, 8's a challenge one, so, you know, if you're pretty good at this, stretch yourself. All right, on that, number 1. Marshall, would you read me number 1, please? The new worksheet for today.
3p squared minus...
3p squared?
Yeah. Minus 2p minus 5.
All right, good. Now, it is good for you to see, Caden, that these sometimes aren't x. Sometimes they're a different letter, like p. But you do them the same exact way. Of course, you can't start with x and x, though. You start with p and p. And then p times p does make p squared, but it doesn't make 3p squared. So, Sam, what do I do instead?
You added 3.
Good. 3p and p. Now, talk me through the signs, Sam. Is there a negative in the problem?
Yeah.
So,
So you need a minus and...
good. A minus and a plus, because that number's negative. Okay, good. Now, you're down to one thing left. How do you make a 5? Don't stretch yourself too hard. There's only one way to make a 5.
Just 1 and 5.
It's got to be 1 and a 5. Now, did I put it in the right place or not? That's the challenge. I'm going to check negative 1p. I'm going to check 15p. Does that make 2p? No. Now, listen close. If I just switch the signs, it'll just switch to the opposite of the answer I just got. And that's not even close. So don't switch the signs. Do switch the other thing you can switch, which is the numbers. Notice I don't switch the signs, I do switch the numbers. See how the 5 and the 1 got reversed? Now all of a sudden, I get all different answers for the smiley face of factoring. I get negative 5p and I get positive 3p, and look at that. It came out right. If it would have came out to the opposite of what I wanted, then I would have switched the signs. If it's not close to what I wanted, switch the numbers. If it's the opposite of what I wanted, switch the signs. Cool. And there you go. There's your first one. Okay, that's all I got for you for today.